you are in adequate compliance. So that's like a very big summary of what I do. And also I'll add also that we actually assist and advise in outbound immigration also. So people that would like to go for tourism or would like to visit or would like to go on business trips, we also advise them on the type of visa to apply for and the process of applying for it. So I think that's a part of the question. Yeah?
Yes, it is a part. The second leg of the question is your experience interfacing with regulators and Nigerian embassies in foreign countries.
Oh, I would say it has its ups and downs in terms of they're being responsive to application and inquiries. And I wouldn't want to generalize, but different embassies and different agencies have their own protocol and their timeline. But what I would say generally is, as regards the embassies, there is no uniformity in submission process, if I can put it that way. So each embassy sometimes have their different list of documents required for. They have their different timeline, and sometimes they have their different processing. So if I would give an example for, if you want to submit your STR visa, for example, in France, and you're using the Paris embassy or the OIS office, they will tell you they're asking for 4 documents, all your documents printed in 5 places, sorry. So you print each of your bundles in 5 places to submit. While, for example, New York will tell you just bring it in 4 places. Algeria will tell you bring 3 copies. So that's like the littlest of the details, but just saying that there is no uniformity generally in dealing with embassies, and you always have to, at every point in time, check the embassy website or the OIS office website to be sure of the compliance mechanism you need to comply to for that particular application, because there are always changes, and sometimes they forget to give people like us updates, and then you get there and find out that what information you have is maybe not as current as it should. But generally, they are quite responsive on the general note, and it's always interesting interfacing with them because you get to meet new people, different officers at different point in time, and you learn at every interface with them. Thank you.
It's already question 1, and I'm already learning a lot. And I can say just from the beginning that our participants here today have a lot to learn. So the same question too for Jaco. So just to ease us into the conversation for today. So Jaco, could you kindly tell us about what you do at Executive Relocations Africa and your experience interfacing with Nigerian embassies and OIS offices in foreign countries?
Let me just unmute myself. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, it's a great honor to be part of this Immigration Roundtable, and thank you for the organizers for inviting me. Just a little bit about Executive Relocations Africa. So we basically assist employees from multinational corporations and their families with their respective relocations and immigration-related matters to Africa. ERA currently provide relocation-related services to 50 of the African countries. And in terms of immigration, we provide 26 of the countries for immigration-related matters, including Nigeria. A little bit about my role. It's straightforward. Basically, as immigration manager, our head office is based in South Africa, Cape Town. So I manage all our local consultants or partners across Africa with all the different assignees that we have. So all files for Africa is managed by me and my team in South Africa. I can definitely mirror what Pam said earlier. You know, when interfacing with the Nigerian embassies, it's sometimes very hard and challenging. The immigration industry and what you need to know to make sure that the applicant is compliant and all the visa application forms and documents are in order is really a lot. What has been standing out for me the most, you know, when interfacing with Nigerian embassies or consulates or even the OIS offices is like Pam said, you know, it's inconsistencies. You'll get, obviously, most of the times we will prepare, for example, an STR or a WP application based on the standard requirements. But then also, you know, you need to check compliance with the relevant respective embassy where the applicant is going to submit. And by that, the only way to reach them is either via email or telephone. And 90% of the time, you either can't reach them via email, or they don't answer their phone, or when they do answer the phone, they speak in such a local accent, or even in a foreign language where they are based, the consultants, that, anyway. So also, to go back to ERA, our scope of work and what we provide as a service to our clients is what I call a white glove service. So we provide everything from A to Z. And if we can't make contact with an embassy or a consulate or even an OIS office to confirm their specific lists of requirements, it means that we have failed in our mission. You can't then ask somebody in the home country or reach out to another partner and ask them, can you please physically go and visit this embassy to make sure we are compliant before we send the applicant there. So yeah, definitely inconsistencies in lists of requirements and the quantity of the application packs. Some require, two sets of the application packs, some up to 5 or 6 copies of the application packs. And then again, we prepare the application pack to the best of our abilities. But then when you get to the embassy or the OIS center, they then either request original versions of the signed letters from Nigeria, which they don't have. They work on, digital copies that got sent to the applicant, or even police clearances from home countries or qualifications that needs to be legalized. So the biggest challenge dealing with the Nigerian Foreign Mission OIS officers is inconsistencies. Yeah.
Thank you, Jaco, for such a detailed and very practical response. So from what both panelists have said, they have both analyzed and itemized the pros and the cons. And I'm sure at the next stakeholders meeting, we'll be able to present some of these areas of improvements, and possibly we'll see improvement and a brighter day. So my next question for Pamilerin is, as an immigration specialist and a legal practitioner with relevant experience in Nigeria, could you provide an overview of the current immigration landscape and recent trends in immigration policies? For instance, we have the new visa policy, and I'll also like to kindly suggest, because we may have participants who are not vast or who are not aware of immigration terminologies, for instance, TWP, OIS. So for ease of learning, yes, could we state the meaning so they can easily learn and follow along with conversation? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will try my best. So there is currently, so it's a bit hard determining the current and the current state of the immigration system and the new trends, because right now we are in the middle trying to transition from what we've been working with into a new sphere, and which is basically where the new visa policy comes in terms of, as at let's say some 5 years ago, the majorly 6 classes of visa they're in operation in Nigeria, which goes from the transit visa to the diplomatic visa to the visiting or tourist visa to the work permit, like temporary work permit, the STR visa, the subject regulation visa. So those were like the broad categories of the visa that we have then, and I would say they are still in operation because we are yet to fully transition into the new classes of visa or the new categories available under the new visa policy. So in 2020, the new visa policy was issued by the Ministry of Interior and the Nigerian Immigration Service, and it introduced 79 classes of visa. So imagine going from a 6 to a 79 with lots of interesting additions, actually, I would say. And then So if I'm to just give a summary of the 79 classes, they can be broken down into 4 sections or 4 categories. The first one is for the visa exemption class. Those are people that can come into the country without visas. And under that, we have 4 categories of people. Of course, ECOWAS countries, we've always known that because of the ECOWAS agreement, ECOWAS nationals can travel in between countries without visas. And your travel in is valid for if you want to stay longer than that, or if you want to get a work after the 90 days, you have to apply for what we call the ECOWAS card. So that's the positive. You can just pick up your passport and buy your ticket and travel down into the country without getting the visa. The second category is like the visa abolishment agreement, which is between Nigeria, Cameroon, and Chad. So Cameroon and Chad citizens can actually come to the country without visas. The third category are for officials of international organizations. So the UNO, the AU, and the likes, UNICEF and the likes, they can very well, with their official passports, travel to the country without getting a visa. The last class is it covers lots of countries actually, based on agreement, bilateral agreements in Nigeria and those countries, like Singapore, like Venezuela, and those other countries. They can travel in, but those apply only to their diplomats, so it's not general. That's the difference between that. For these last categories, they are up to like 16 countries with that agreement, but only for their diplomats. So that's like the first 4 categories. Then we have the short visiting visa. This basically applies for short visits, and there are 24 classes of visa under that, ranging from the normal business visa to tourism to visiting to religious events and other things like that. Then the other category is the temporary residence visa. That has like 36 classes under it. And so basically temporary work, temporary residence, so you can come in and work temporarily under that. It covers for accredited diplomats, because workers, as the name already implies, employment generally, employment in the free zone or normal employment with international NGOs, employment with the government. There are classes of visas provided for that. So which is basically the difference. So generally, currently we only have the STR visa that everybody applies for, irrespective of where you're going to come and work, either government or not, free zone or not, normal employment or not, NGO, it doesn't matter. You just apply for the STR. But the new visa policy has now given it different classes to ensure that each person is getting a visa for the exact purpose you are coming in for. Then the last category is for permanent residency, which is the one that for me is the most interesting, because Nigeria for a while has not had anything like that. All we've always had is our citizenship, and then your naturalization or your registration or your SIS, that's the special migrant status, or your Nigeria wife for people married to Nigerians, as the case may be. So, but now with the permanent residency visa, there are lots of opportunities and precise visas, let me put it that way, that allows people to come into the country to do what you need to do. Those are longer, as the name implies, permanent residency visa, just like how we do PR for Canada or for other countries. And there are different categories available for that, ranging from highly skilled workers to retirees, both retired in Nigeria and abroad, to Nigerians that are renowned. We all know that there's some countries that does not allow dual citizenship. So if I'm in Nigeria and I want to go to that kind of a country, I would be forced to renounce my citizenship before I can take up that citizenship. And what has happened after then is also that I had to renounce, like that when coming, they are basically coming in as expatriates, quote unquote. It's like they're never citizens of the country. And then, of course, they can't get a passport again. They usually have to end up going for like normal visiting visas and all. But now the visa policy provides for a criteria for them, saying that even if you have renounced, you can come in and get a PR in Nigeria, valid for as long as international passport. And it covers for their wives, which is quite interesting. And also, the new visa policy is very interesting, brings a lot of new, exciting trends and opportunities, especially both for the country itself in terms of foreign direct investment and investment in, of course, from knowledge and skills of people that are coming in, and also people that actually want to come in. So it's quite interesting. And we all look forward to the full implementation of that visa policy. About that, the other trends, as of 2019, the Nigerian Immigration Service brought up the initiative for e-registration, saying that we understand that you've gotten your visa in the country. So any expatriates in the country that has a SEPAC, that's the combined residency alien card, that's what we get when you get your STR visa, or your green card as we call it. Or if you're an expatriate and you're in the country for more than 90 days, you have to go for your e-registration. And when that policy came out, it was very interesting in the sense that if you go to any NIS office, even as early as 6 a.m., you can see almost 1,000 expatriates on the line waiting to be registered. And it was like that for months until recent, whereby the large crowd has gone, and then people can just walk in now to make your registration. And as of last month, the NIS issued another policy that before you can renew your SEPAC, before you can renew your green card and continue your stay in the country, you must submit your e-registration slip also. That wasn't there before. So it's a way of getting people to ensure that they comply with the requirement to get their e-registration done. And then also last year too, NIS instructed that for every renewal that wants to be done by an expatriate, you must submit your personal income tax document. Again, it's just to be sure that expatriates working in Nigeria are paying their taxes, and the government can ensure that. Then the most interesting one last month, before the former Minister of Interior left the office, he announced the issuance of brown card, which I believe is in line with the permanent residency category of new visa policy, in terms of when you come into the country, instead of having maybe just your passport stamped, you will get a brown card as a symbol of your permanent residency in Nigeria. And then depending on the validity, you would always renew. So I think that's like a summary of all the new trends currently in Nigeria, and all of them all hinge on the full implementation of the new visa policy. Thank you.
Now I can imagine the move from 6 classes to 79 classes. That's lots. That's more than times 4, even 5 of the total number of classes. So I can imagine that move. But then I have a follow-up question for Jaco from what Pamilerin has said. So she has spoken about the subject to regularization visa, that's the STR visa, and the new classes, generalization of classes for employment. So my question is, from your experience, Jaco, you have been involved in several documentation and verification of STR packages. So what has been your experience on that part with Nigerian embassies in foreign countries? Jaco, could you kindly unmute yourself? It seems like you're still muted. Yes.
Apologies, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you for the question. So, in terms of ERA and what we provide as services for expats going to work in Nigeria, we mainly focus on the STR and then the SERPAC long-term work and residence permits. For me, the same challenges sort of arise. We see, like I said earlier, the inconsistency with requirements, where you'll get to the embassy or the OAS office, and suddenly they ask, for a police clearance certificate as part of your STR application, which is not part of the standard requirements. So it definitely creates challenges, because normally by that time, if the applicant arrives for submission at the embassy level and suddenly faced with another requirement, and now he needs to go back and get that requirement and visit the embassy for a second time. But that time, normally on our side, we get information, from corporate. Why didn't you tell the applicants to do X, Y, Z? And that is what make it very challenging to try and see and engage then again with corporate and try and bring things back on track with the relevant embassies. Yeah.
From what you've highlighted so far, especially with your experiences, what do you think that the Nigerian embassies in these foreign countries could be doing better? What areas of improvements can you highlight?
Well, for me, in between all the different systems that's currently in place, the NIS portal, the OIS portal, and then some foreign embassies bypass the OIS system, which is the integrated online system. They actually make use of the VFS Global platform for visa facilitation services. The thing that will definitely help applicants going forward is to have the correct list of requirements available online for research and to make sure that they are compliant at the time of submission.
Yes, thank you so much, Jaco, for your response. So, Pamilerin, do you have comments from Jaco's last two questions? That is, in terms of your own experience interfacing with the OIS embassies and then arranging STR packages and also areas of improvement too as well.
Okay, so I greatly align myself with what Jaco said. I would say the major issue that we have is the lack of communication. Because now, in between the customers, if I could use that word on this end, and the OIS offices or the embassies. And also, most times, in between the Nigerian Immigration Service itself here in Nigeria and the embassies. So I've had an instance where I needed to ask about, I think it was a multiple entry visa from a particular embassy. And upon calling them, the person that picked the call was so sure that there is no multiple entry visa. And that was quite shocking because just a month before then, I got a multiple entry visa for another client from another embassy. So sometimes they are not well carried or along or well informed of the changes going on with it. So they have in mind the whole, right now, if you look at some of the embassies' website, the list of documents you will see, or find the list of documents required some 10 years ago. So it doesn't have the current standard documents required. And that makes it very tough, just like Jaco said, because then you now start calling and sending emails, which they most of the time would not reply to. I think we had that experience recently for Algeria. I'm sure Jaco will remember that because we had to work together on that. And then we're trying to read them, we couldn't read them. And eventually the client submitted, and then was at the point I'm sure she now got a list of documents required. And then had to do some extra things right there, which was a bit challenging and disturbing because when you think you already have all you need in place. I think that communication gap needs to be bridged to be sure that for every new policy or for every new document added or required for application, it is well stated on their website. And then when there are changes also within the Nigerian immigration system itself, every embassy needs to be carried along and to be well informed. Another example was in April, the NIS changed their platform from our website to a new website. And it was sad because in between the transition, people could not get visas. Even to normal VOA, it couldn't be issued because it was getting lost. And then they would tell you check this email or the other email. And for that couple of weeks or a month, it was just very destabilizing. And then now there are new documents required. And you wouldn't know that because it is not on their website. And then it's just challenging. A client was still asking me last week that asking for a particular document, and I had to explain to her that that document is no longer being issued because of the new platform that we have. So it's important that that communication gap be bridged so that people don't find visa processing very challenging and disturbing because we want people to come to the country. And then if our process are not very smooth, people will just be discouraged and then it wouldn't, on the long run, favor the country.
From my own personal experience, I think I can even make a comment on this particular topic because we've had instances, personal instance where I was part of the team and we had to send a local partner to support the expatriates at the embassy with printing and also document compilation because of additional documents that had been requested for but were not on the website. So I believe and I strongly agree that more needs to be done and then hopefully we'll start to see change in this regard. So for the next question, we've given a lot of areas of improvements and also comments. So Jaco, how do you see the role of the Nigerian embassies evolving in line with digital advancements and the changing global landscape, especially in the context of applications for temporary work permits and STR visas?
Thank you for the question. You know, when I compare, and I know it's not fair to compare Nigerian immigration services with another country, but because I am exposed, you know, to so many different countries and their immigration policies and acts and how they process applications, the thing that I could suggest, if possible, you know, to go with the new trends, what we are seeing to digitize applications, is to actually, with the new visa policy, perhaps create that digitized application process, you know, whether it's via the NIS system or integrated with the OAS system that the embassy can read, have the applicant actually upload his documents, you know, in whether it's a JPEG format or a PDF format, upload the relevant applications based on relevant requirements, apologies, in line with a list of requirements, and then get a dedicated person or a robot, I don't know how it's going to work, but you know, have the online platform to upload all documents and press submit. Let it be reviewed, and then if you get a confirmation that documents are in order, then proceed and visit the embassy with your passport and your photographs and get your visa, you know, endorsed and issued. So that's definitely something that I would suggest and would like to see happening soon, since Nigeria is implementing this huge new visa policy, and they do have a very nice functioning NIS platform that can definitely facilitate potentially going digitized with applications.
Okay, so Pamela, over to you to how do you see the role of the Nigerian embassies evolving in line with digital advancements and making of applications?
So I would strongly align with Jaco. The volume of paper used for applications can be alarming. Like you can, for one STRS application, you can use almost a bundle depending on the amount of qualifications and the list of documents required. So some of these things are not needed and they can easily be avoided in terms of either having a record of companies. So I'm sure that the NIS and the Ministry of Interior has a record of every company that has quotas in Nigeria. So I would expect that if a particular client is, I don't know, is a frequent employer of expatriates, if I can put it that way, then I don't need for every application for that particular company to submit their CSC documents or their quota or their business permit. These things should already be in their record for ease of access, and then maybe just request for only the documents you need that pertains to the particular applicant at that time. Then what embassies can also do is to improve on their level of feedback. It's very important, not just the embassies, but even the NIS office itself. So we can know that part of our report to them. Because I had an experience like last month where the expert submitted the STR visa in, I think, London, I'm not sure. And for 4 months, we didn't hear from them. Frequent emails, what's going on? OIS will reply that it's the embassy that is keeping you with. Or the embassy, you don't get feedback from them for 4 months, get the guy's passport back. And then by the time we had to reach out to the highest of the highest at the NIS office to reach out to the embassy to find out what's going on, they did not send an email saying that they need a particular document, and that was why it wasn't processed. And at that point, it was very, very frustrating because imagine having to explain to your clients what is going on, and they're like, are you people even, are you getting yourselves right? That kind of a thing. So the feedback system needs to be very, very well worked on in terms that if you need a shared document for an application, promptly let the client know or the applicant know so they can provide the document. And even if you're going to reject the visa, the reasons for the rejection should be clearly stated. So if there's into appeal or not, you would know. So I think apart from the going full digital, it's important that we have a good feedback system. Thank you.
I think all the areas of improvement and also areas of concern are well notable, and then if implemented, I see our immigration processes becoming better for it. So thank you so much for your inputs and your comments so far. So taking us back to one of the recent trends that Pamilerin had earlier noted when she was talking about the Nigerian visa policy 2020. So she had mentioned one of the classes being the employment visa for expatriates coming to work. So based off of that, and expatriates coming to work in Nigeria, we may all know that they have to be highly skilled individuals. So this question is for Jaco. So Jaco, what challenges do foreigners and companies bringing in highly skilled workers frequently encounter when navigating the Nigerian immigration system, and how do you assist them in overcoming these challenges?
Well, I'm going to start by saying that this is not just relating to Nigeria. It's a common challenge I face all over Africa. That's the requirement for qualifications. There is often, when an expat is being recruited, let's say from a mother company in Europe to a branch in Nigeria, but he has maybe got a marketing degree that he obtained in 2020, but now he's working as maybe an engineer or whatever. Because of that marketing qualification, he will not qualify to apply for the position that's on the expatriate quota because the qualification doesn't match his experience or the position that's being offered to him. So the biggest challenge that we are facing, and this is part of what we do with ERA first, is, before we even accept what we say, a file to move forward, we request to have an assessment first with the local corporate, review the proposed applicant CV to make sure first that we can move forward. There is a good chance for success rate. Does the qualification and experiences all link up to the job position that's being offered? And is that, again, going back onto the expatriated quota, and is it all in line? So yeah, the biggest thing that we face with local corporates is make sure that the applicants that you are sending or the expats you are sending to Nigeria, that their qualifications line up with their experiences and the jobs being offered.
So Pamilerin, over to you. Do you have comments? Do you have additions or practical experiences you would like to share?
Yeah, I'll just add to what Jaco said. The issue is that the quota is given sometimes years before the employee or the employee is about to be employed. It's even like getting to even know the company. So you already have a number of positions available, and then it's now important for you to try to ensure that whoever you want to bring on board is going to align with those existing positions, and they have the required qualification for it. And for a while, as of last year, the impression gotten from the NIS and the OIS office and the embassies is that you can either have your professional qualification or your academic qualification. So let's say I'm a doctor, but then I've done 1 or 2 professional courses to make me qualify to be an engineer. So I might just not submit my medical qualification or my medical degree, I can just submit my professional qualifications to back up the reason why I'm applying or why I fit for that position. But in the last couple of months, we've seen a switch from the trend that what NIS wants is just your academic qualification. And this is from experience. Because we had an expatriate who has been in military all his life, and he has all the degrees, and so not degrees this time. He has all the trainings and certificates for the particular role. Was going to be employed as, I think, as a risk consultant, something like that, something around security. So is like an ex-military guy. He has all the trainings and certificates. But then his SCR visa was denied. Why? Because they wanted to see his academic qualification. So I think there is that shift. And unfortunately, like I already mentioned, lack of communication. It wasn't communicated. People in while past back has had to submit using their professional qualification and didn't have any issue. But now they're having issues because all what they basically want to see is your academic qualification. So now we have to ensure that we have to not just have professional qualification, but have the academic. So even your LLB or your master, whatever it is you have, just ensure that your academic qualification is added to your compilation. And then you can almost be sure that you will get your visa approved. So that's just what I would like to add.
That's I think one notable thing about this immigration roundtable so far is its ability to not just tell us about the law and the theoretical aspect of it, but also share practical experiences with us. So at this note, I'll be moving to the next question for Pamilerin. So while talking about the innovations and classes of visa under the Nigeria Visa Policy 2020, you had mentioned several classes of visas. So my question is, can you tell us more about immigration pathways available for individuals and families? So you had mentioned it, but could you focus on those pathways that allow for dependents as well as expatriates?
All right, thank you for that question. So currently, only the STR visa allows you to bring your dependents. Only the service regular visa. That means that when you get your STR visa, come to the country, then you get your green card. Only then can you actually bring your dependents. And dependent is limited to just your spouse and your children. But now, thanks to the new visa policy, lots of other visa classes allows you to bring in dependents. And they divided the types of dependents. So there's your spouse, definitely. Then there's for your children, there's a minor from 0 to 18 years, and then from 18 upward. Then there is now opportunity for you to bring your aged parents from 65 and above, which is very well interesting, and it's a welcome development. And then, so not just your STR now, most of the employment category visa allows you to bring your dependents. And then for all the categories under the permanent residency visa, you are allowed to bring in your dependents. So if you're coming as an investor, either small, medium, or ultra, or oil and gas, you can bring your dependent. If you're a skilled worker, you can bring your dependent. If you are a retiree, you can bring in your dependents. If you are coming as under the academic exchange program or as a student, you are only allowed to bring in your spouse. Apart from that, every other category allows you to bring in your spouse, your children, and your aged parent.
Pamilerin, thanks so much for your response. So my final question for you would be, speaking about the implementation of the Nigeria visa policy. So you had earlier said that these visa classes are yet to be fully operational. So upon being implemented and becoming fully operational, what potential hurdles or consequences of development do you see these classes making to the immigration policy?
Okay, so what I said is going to be the transitioning process. I'm not sure we have that ready platform to make transitioning easy and seamless, if you get what I mean. So we're switching from our websites. So just switching websites for almost like a month, we had a downtime and we couldn't do applications on the platform. So one of the challenges I can foresee is the preparation of the site to accommodate all of this changing, because even as of now, not all these class officers are available on the platform yet. So you're telling me I can come and invest and come in as an investor to the country, and I bring my 200,000 USD for a small investor. But then I don't even know how I'm meant to go about it. The visa policy only provides that I must show proof of funds that I have this amount of money ready to be invested in Nigeria. So, but how do I make the application? You said it's via the embassy. So, but then if I go to your website, I can't click the link that say this is the kind of visa I want to apply for. So even if we can't get that right yet, how do we want people to start investing? How do you want people to be able to come in and use the opportunity and use the visa classes you're making available? I think it's important that we need to get ourselves right. And even up to today, the handbook, immigration handbook, is yet to be updated. So there's no step-by-step guideline or requirement on how to even process and apply for these visas. We only have them on paper. So we need to ensure that we need to, of course, communicate with them, and every way we can work with the NIS office to ensure that the transitioning and making it fully effective, we are able to make it seamless and launch it out and stop holding back, because we keep saying 2020, visa policy 2020. It's like almost 3 years after then, and we are still not there yet. So we need to get our acts right and ensure that everything you need is given out and the information is just there for everybody to access, and then you don't have to start looking for different people to ensure you get the thing. So I think that's the major challenge I foresee, and we can readily work around it. It's just for us to be well prepared, involve the right people, and make it a seamless one.
If I may jump in there.
Yes,
Sure.
yes, sure.
Yeah. It's one thing to have a new visa policy, but without right communication and implementation, it's going to fall flat. It's the same, when we have the OIS centers dealing, accepting visa applications on behalf of embassies in some of the countries. If the new visas aren't implemented across all relevant platforms, and you have to work through the OIS system to reach the embassy, and the OIS website doesn't have the new visa or don't know about the new visa, and they say phone the embassy, and you phone the embassy and say we don't deal with people, we only deal with OIS, you must speak to OIS, then you're stuck. What do you do then? So definitely implementation and communication is key to get all these new categories or even the existing ones right first.
Yeah, so Jaco, just before you jumped in, I wanted to draw from your experience. So you had earlier stated that the primary seat for ERA is in Cape Town, South Africa. So in South Africa, do you have something similar to the Nigerian visa policy, and how does it operate?
How much time do you have? Well, yes, we also have. It's not really a policy, but we have the Immigration Act and regulations. So within our different visa categories in South Africa, there's about 20 different type of visas, which range also from everything from tourist visas to short-term visas to long-term work visas to permanent residence permits. When it comes to lists of requirements, for example, as well, and liaising with the South African embassy abroad, we are facing exactly the same challenges. we can prepare a South African work visa application according to the standard lists or according to the immigration regulations. But then when you get to the embassy, it's the same thing. It's as if embassies don't speak to their own Ministry of Foreign Affairs to update their own visa policies. It's the same across all. So what we are experiencing in Nigeria, with the challenges facing with Nigerian foreign missions abroad in the OAS system, I'm experiencing exactly the same type of challenges within our South African immigration visa categories and dealing with VFS Globals on behalf of the South African embassies. Very similar, but very complex as well.
Mm.
Do you unmute?
Oh, yes, I'm muted. Thank you. I was saying thank you so much for your inputs. Would I say it's nice? It's nice to know that we have partners.
You're not alone.
Partners, yes, exactly. We're not alone. So we have partners of improvement. We are partners in improvement. So that's great. So at this point, we've gone an hour into our allocated time. So we'll be calling on the participants to drop questions that they may have for our panelists and areas in which they want our panelists to share more insights and knowledge on. Ooh, first question just came in. So we have a question from Francis O'Rourke. Apologies if I get anybody's name wrong. So it says, good afternoon, great discussion so far. I have two questions. His first question is, given the need to provide several personal documents and the digital filing of applications to obtain any category of visa, are there existing data protection mechanisms to secure personal data provided to the NIS? And then his second question is, so for our panelists, would you want me to run through both questions or respond to one and then move to the next?
Probably one at a time.
Okay. So I'll take the first question again. Given the need to provide several personal documents and the digital filing of applications to obtain any category of visa, are there existing data protection mechanisms to secure personal data provided to the NIS? So Pamela, would you like to take that as someone who regularly interfaces with the NIS?
Yeah, so like you said, I interface, I don't really work with them. So I'm not very sure of the extent of their data protection policy, but I can speak for my firm to say that we ensure that we adhere to every regulation as regards data protection. And to the little that I understand in my relation with the NIS office, for visa on arrivals, you just upload your documents. So it's not exactly going hand to hand. So that may be secure. For the other class of visa, I wouldn't be able to beat my chest to say they are protected, because when it comes to paper can be thrown anywhere. Although when you submit your STR visa compilation, I should add that the OIS office returns your document to you, which you bring back to Nigeria. So the question is, what does the NIS itself do with the papers after they've collected and verified and issued your SEPA? And it would have been a very lovely question if the other panelist was able to join in. They would have been able to guide. But then what I would just say as regards that question is, we can always give our advice and give our recommendation on how best it is to ensure that people's information and data are well protected. So such that even if, so for example, SCR, you submit 4 documents. I'm not sure NIS keeps all the documents. So they can return the excess to you to do as you wish, either to trash or to keep for your record. And even if they would no longer be having those ones in their file, it's important they find a very good way to dispose of them and ensure that everybody's, because it's actually a very vital question. I'm giving you my data page, I'm giving you my house address, I'm giving you my phone number, email, everything that you need to know about me are in those applications. And important than not buying something by the road and see my documents being used. So we will definitely get back to NIS further on that to ensure that they do more to protect people's personal data.
Thank you, Pamilerin, for your response. So, Jaco, drawing from your experience in South Africa, would you like to attempt that question?
I'm also going to agree with what Pam said. You know, when I have to look at the South African Immigration Services point of view, we also work on paper. You know, when we submit a long-term work visa application at our embassies abroad, your application pack as the main principal applicant can be up to 150 pages. You know, so again, your personal data is quadrupled over so many different pieces of paper. And data protection is key, and that's where I think most of our governments and authorities do need to invest more on data protection and go digital. You know, whether it's multi-vector verification or authentication processes, the strong password requirements, you know, to log into a secure portal. Data protection is definitely key. And also, just like Famsville do, us at ERA as well, we are strict when it comes to data protection. We are owned by a French-owned company, so GDPR data protection, we are very strict. That's very important, yeah.
So the next question from Francis is coming from the 2020 global health emergency, the pandemic. How has Nigeria's immigration policies been recalibrated to factor in such emergency situations?
Okay, good question. Thank you for that, Francis. So I would give two examples, one from during the pandemic itself and now. So during the pandemic, you know, there was a lockdown and nobody could travel and the likes. I remember that we had one or two emergencies like that, and the expatriates needed to travel to Nigeria, do some things. And upon lots of communication with the NIS and the Ministry of Interior, we found out that there was a particular application in place that could be submitted directly to the controller, explaining why this person needs to travel in immediately and asking that they be given the permission to arrive in Nigeria. Although I wouldn't think it was a thing of public knowledge, it was probably restricted to a few people. And I was privileged to be one of them because I know I made that application. I was able to get a couple of expatriates in. I would say that generally our response time is always slow, and we are largely not proactive in things like that. So I guess you just have to come up with something like a method so that if people need to travel, then they must travel. So rather than wait for those kind of things, I think it's always better to be proactive with them. And then I know in the visa policy, one of the short-term visa classes available is the emergency relief visa. Say I need to travel immediately, I need to apply for the visa. And the good thing is it's online. Oh, sorry, when it's being implemented, it's going to be online. So it's be like your normal VOE. And then when you apply for it within a day or two, all things being equal, you should get your approval to travel. So we are still working on it. We are not there yet. And emergencies are bound to arise, and we will always be able to, at frequently held stakeholders meeting with the NIS and with the Ministry of Interior. All of this is always pointed out to ensure that proactive steps are taken to ensure that when this happens and there's an emergency to travel in or out, as the case may be, there's the procedure easily accessible to make that done.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pamilerin, for your response. So I believe, Francis, your questions have been answered. From his questions, I also have a question for Jaco too as well. So Jaco, could you tell us your experience during the pandemic? Experience making applications, interfacing with embassies. The experience doesn't have to be limited to Nigeria. It could be Nigeria, South Africa, several African countries.
Sure, no problem. When the pandemic hit, like most people in the world, it was panic. From the South African immigration point, and our local government that decided to put the country on lockdown, most countries went on lockdown. And, after those, I can't even remember how long it took before, we slowly started opening our borders up again for certain people or certain nationalities that can travel, with the relevant vaccine or proof of, they are not infected by COVID. The immigration systems and authorities lagged behind on following what was happening, practically in the world. We also had an option for if you have to travel on an emergency basis back to South Africa as a foreigner because of your job that you have here. It wasn't common knowledge, but some of us within the industry knew who to contact to inquire, is there such emergency entry, available? What has resulted in the pandemic and what we are experiencing at the moment with Africa Immigration Services is a huge visa application backlog. I've frequently referred to pre-COVID times, because pre-COVID things sort of worked. Yes, there were delays, but delays were maybe a week or 2 or 3 or at the month outside of the normal processing times that it would take for a visa. Now we're up to a year in backlog. There was a new figure released not long ago, I think it was about last week or the week before, that with local visa submissions in South Africa in part of renewals or visa applications pending at foreign missions abroad, we are currently sitting on 75,000 visa applications in backlog. So a simple visa that used to take 4 to 6 weeks perhaps to come through, our processing time are now up to 6 to 9 plus months just for a simple visa application. I'm not even talking about long-term work visa applications. So COVID has left us with a bit of a bad taste in our mouth. And like most countries, we are all just trying to catch up.
Thank you so much, Jaco, for your response. And Pamilerin too as well. It really gave us insight into what was happening during COVID and also comparing pre-COVID and the situation we have post-COVID. So, Francis says very satisfactory answer. So thank you to our panelists. And also on behalf of the management of Famsville, at this point, we are getting closer to our 2:30 benchmark. And I believe we've been able to provide, our panelists have been able to provide insights into the topic in less than the time. It just shows how sound they are on the area of the topic and their areas of expertise. So on behalf of the management of Famsville, I would like to say a big thank you to our panelists for taking out the time from their busy schedule to stay with us and giving us the opportunity to learn from them too as well. And then to our participants, thank you too as well for joining in and for giving us this opportunity to share our insights with you. For participants who had some network or technical difficulties, if you have questions or areas of concerns that you'd like the panelists to address, do reach out to us and then we'll be sure to share your questions with the panelists and share a response back with you. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Pamilerin. Thank you, Jaco.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.